Okay, so wonderful warm welcome this afternoon to Sally, and for our listeners this afternoon we've got an amazing person to come in to speak to us on the British Business Podcast, and what I'd like to do straight away is hand over to Sally to give you a little bit of background into Sally and what she's done and where she is at the moment, and so if you wouldn't mind, Sally, is that okay?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yes, so I'm Sally Pettipher, and I ask anybody that wishes to connect to find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Sally Pettipher in the world, with Pettipher. So you can find me, and that's easy. And I'm here to talk to you about love of the game.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So can you just explain a little bit of background about love of the game, where it came from, and where you are today? So the journey that you've been on to get to this particular point.
So in terms of journeys, I would say this is a 100-metre sprint. This is not a marathon. We started Love of the Game. It's a charitable campaign to treat concussion in sports people.
Okay.
Big issue at the moment. And I've done a lot of work in sport, particularly with rugby players, and it's something that worries them. So a year ago, exactly, we started a campaign, three of us, a very entrepreneurial businessman, an international rugby legend who's called Simon Shaw, or Shawsy to his mates,
Sure.
and myself, I'm the idiot in the gang. And we decided that it's a desperately difficult issue, and we need solutions. So Love of the Game is a solutions-based campaign, finding technology that will prevent, diagnose or cure concussion. And that helps both immediate issues, things like persistent concussion syndrome, but it also might help with this long-term dementia issue that we're all concerned about. So we started this campaign and just said, you know what, UK, medicine, academia, research, they're just the best in the world.
Wow.
Let us apply ourselves, as we did with COVID, in a dedicated fashion to finding solutions, and that's what we've done.
So the two people other than yourself who are in this, what do you call it? We call it
a campaign. We're registering
campaign.
as a charity, but it's a campaign.
Okay. And the two other people that are involved in that are?
So we founded it with Simon Shaw, who is second row rugby player for England and British Lions, and Wasps was his club, and a guy called Lawrence Geller CBE, and he is an international businessman, but also very early in his career was a Wasps player, and indeed I think the youngest and first Jewish player for England rugby.
Wow.
And he's also a dementia expert, so one of his businesses is dementia care homes. So we all have this real concern about vascular damage in the brain.
Okay.
And my background includes science and some technology, and I knew from my other work that there are things that can be done really quickly, really quickly to deal with this. And that's what I set out to do, rather than... I know there are a lot of people suffering and there's a lot of money being raised for welfare and concern, and that's absolutely right. But I said, let's find a solution.
Wow, that's amazing.
So in the last year, the first thing we did was a hackathon. Do you know about hackathons?
No, what's a hackathon?
A hackathon. So a hackathon was born out of the software industry, where you just get a pile of people together and you go, well, we've got this problem. Let's lock the doors. 48 hours, absolute sweatbox, come up with a solution. And so many new technical solutions have come out of those.
Would that in the olden days be called a brainstorming?
Well, maybe, but it was really quite technical. It moved into, having screwdrivers and sticky back plastic and, literally designing prototypes in a room. And these things took off, and then they moved into industry. So we had, in the middle of COVID lockdown, March 2021, the first hackathon in sport, through all our different connections, but my sort of academic connections, we got really bright PhD students, faculty and students from Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial College, Royal College of Art and Design. We were sponsored by Princess Charlene of Monaco. We had Sunday Times sports correspondent as a judge. And we did a virtual hackathon with all these students, and we threw at them the problem of people are getting consistent, repetitive, minor brain injuries that may lead to long-term problems. How do we stop it? Boom. We didn't offer them anything. We just said, go away for 48 hours in online teams, come back with some ideas. And we had prizes. We had prizes for the best solution for children, the best technology for women, the best technology for elite, the best one for prevention, the best one for diagnosis. And we had 6 prize winners over 48 hours with new headbands for cheerleaders. Who knew cheerleaders have massive concussion issues?
No way.
Well, because they throw them up in the air and they hit their heads all the time.
Of course.
And something that works for cheerleaders works for gymnasts, it works for judo players, it works for anybody who's being thrown on the ground.
Wow.
So they won the best prize for women. We had loads of technology. So we did the first hackathon in sport with all of these amazing students. That was great fun. And we then worked an awful lot with the British government. So the British government has a role to play in creating policy to protect people.
Okay.
People, the population,
Yep.
their population, rather than the sports bodies that have very differing issues to deal with. You were a cricketer
Yes.
and a footballer.
Yes.
The issues of injuries in football are very different to the issues of injuries in cricket, where you've got one very fast ball coming at you,
Very hard.
very hard, versus sort of heading the ball in football. Rugby as a contact sport is very different to motorsport, which is very different to cycling.
Sure.
So any of these sports that have helmets have recognised,
Yes.
An occasional but catastrophic opportunity to hurt yourself,
Yes.
and maybe a
Wow.
helmet will help. Whereas the sports with concussion have yet to get to that. Do you know what? Actually, we need to do something about this. And government can play a part in setting some basic parameters for how we deal with protecting our people.
Wow.
So we were working with them, and our chairman, Lawrence Geller, has since been made the official ministerial advisor on concussion in sport to Her Majesty's government. So the government response to how we deal with this mentions the Love of the Game hackathon and its new technologies. And then just before Christmas, we had our first demo day. And demo day was all of these technologies that had come out of hackathon, how far they'd developed, and then new technologies from all over the world, things that are FDA approved in the USA, but
Okay.
we're not using them in the UK.
Okay.
So our campaign is unearthing these amazing technologies. We have because we are completely impartial and charitable, there's no sense of, we're promoting that one over that one.
Yes.
We are just evaluating them all, highlighting them to the world, saying, we think this one really works, as does this one, go and use it. And Demo Day was highlighting 6 of those that have come forward. And then this coming year, 2022, we'll do the same.
Wow. So you said earlier something that I was really interested in. You said, this is a sprint.
Well, it's a sprint because medical research normally takes years and years.
Yes.
It takes hundreds of millions of pounds. It takes decades. And actually, there is technology out there that can help immediately.
Wow.
And the great thing about sports bodies and sports people are determined by performance.
Yes.
If they're injured, they want to be back on that pitch.
Yes.
And we do not want to kill our games. We don't want to stop tackles
No.
in rugby. We don't want to stop headers in football. Imagine how dull that would be. So what we need are things that can actually help people right now. And that's what we've done. We've got this fabulous brain scanner from America. It can do you a brain scan in 6 minutes. My boss owns a rugby club. His is the first professional sports club that is going to be trialling this piece of technology in the UK, because if it gets approved in the UK, we can use it here immediately. We don't need 10 years of research to do that. And there are sports people out there going, yeah, I'll have it now, thank you.
Excuse the pun, but it sounds like a game changer.
It is a game changer. It is.
Wow.
And there's lots of stuff, lots of mouthguard technology coming forward.
Sure.
It's not about protecting your teeth, it's got impact assessors in there. Because, of course, it's attached to your skull.
Yes.
So, a number of them will sense an impact. What's the scale and severity of the impact? Some of them will tell you the shearing force. So if you're a boxer, it'll say it's come from here up to there, and what that's done to your brain.
Wow.
So there's some really fascinating technology, lots of those coming forward. Question, will sports people wear them? So imagine you've got a gum shield that's like this big.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Is that going to restrict your breathing?
I'm not going to wear it. A rugby
Image
player,
rights.
Yeah, exactly. Rugby player with scrum cap. I talk to rugby players, and they are that's moving that way. But there was a time, I'm not wearing a scrum cap. And scrum caps are really designed to stop grazes and cauliflower ears. They are not designed to prevent head injuries,
inside.
But they could be.
Okay.
But if in preventing a head injury you end up not being able to see, that's a bit of an impediment to the game.
Wow.
So that's where love of the game comes in. We love our games, we want to protect the sports we love, and there are really immediate technologies that can help.
Our listeners might be out there thinking to themselves, how can I get involved?
Get hold of me.
Okay.
Get hold of me. As we're so new, we have a website, loveofthegame.org. There's no .uk on there, loveofthegame.org. But even that's, being designed as we go. So if you want to help, and help can span, I would like to be part of the trials of this new brain scanner.
Awesome.
I would like to be part of the trials of high-dose oxygen therapy to repair vascular damage in the brain. It can be, I'm willing to come to a fundraiser, I'm willing to share the message on my social media platforms. I've got a technology that I think could be pivoted to help.
Wow.
And I'm really, really interested in treatments and cures.
Sure.
So I would say that the predominance of technology that we have had highlighted to us is prevention. There's a real thing about diagnosis, about how bad is that head injury.
Yes.
Our heads are very well designed to protect us, but also means you can't see inside them very well.
Yes.
So if you've got a muscle tear, you'll know this. You can grade it 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Your recovery, your treatment is graded on that. Brain, no idea. We're in the dark ages. So the brain scanner is a helpful diagnostic, potentially, should our new project this year prove that to be the case. But curing the damage. So successive vascular damage in the brain, how do you repair that? How do you make it not a long-term problem? And this really interesting technology, but much less interesting technology than prevention. So I want to find a cure.
Wow. Absolutely fascinating. Fantastic to learn of this. Myself have been involved in sport for many years, and I can't wait to get on the website and give my little bit back and help, and can't wait to do that. I'd like to move into another area, if I may, that I think is connected in a way, maybe, and I'd like you to explain again to our listeners about how you got involved with, and I need to get this correct, so I'm going to go to my card, the Cornwall Stadium, the new stadium.
Or Stadium for Cornwall.
Stadium for Cornwall.
It's a small point.
And that's the branding.
It's the branding, Stadium for Cornwall. .co.uk. Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Go onto my LinkedIn.
Fantastic.
You'll find it.
Fantastic. And what is that? Where's that come from? How long has it been in the making? All of those questions.
So my day job, Love of the Game is my, Love of the Game is one of my charitable ventures. And my day job is I am chief of staff to a man called Dicky Evans, and he owns the Cornish Pirates Rugby Club and Truro City Football Club. And for a very long time, indeed 12 years, we have wanted to build a stadium for the Pirates initially, and now for the football club. Cornwall.
So ground share.
Ground share. I mean, it's actually legally one business.
Okay.
But it would be sharing rugby and football on the same ground.
Excellent.
So Cornwall is this just stunning county. Anybody who's visited, absolutely stunning county. But it's also more than a tourist county. You've got 565,000 people who live in Cornwall, and they are absolutely passionate about their cultural heritage, their cultural icons, and their sporting heroes. And Cornish Pirates are just one of the biggest sports brands in the country, and I would say the biggest brand in Cornwall.
Okay.
Truro City Football Club are a non-league, but my boss bought Cornish Pirates 20 years ago, and I'll talk about him another time.
Okay.
Because, what sort of business model is it buying a rugby club? But as a businessman, an entrepreneur, he said, we have to build a stadium that allows a greater audience. So A, there are people across Cornwall who want to come and watch Pirates. And B, Pirates' economic future is protected by having a greater audience.
Of course.
And a stadium is part of that. So, to do a major infrastructure project takes an awfully long time.
Yes.
And
there
were 30 sites identified by the local council, and they investigated it, and we decided on Truro. Truro is the only city in Cornwall, and it's pretty accessible to everybody. So the Stadium for Cornwall was born, and since then, like many projects, it's ups and it's downs.
It's never smooth.
Never smooth. Well, also, it required design, it required planning. The last major piece was planning permission, which was finally granted in January 2020, 2 years ago.
Okay.
And in March 2020, COVID. So
great timing.
Yeah, well, so we're coming out of it now,
Sure.
and in many ways, those projects get worse or they get better, and this project has got better in those 2 years.
Oh wow!
As a proposition, but it's 2 years. That has required more investment in the club without any return, from an increased base. But the key thing that's made this project better is that we are going to put the first specialist sports concussion unit into that stadium.
Wow.
So when you build something yourself, you have the capacity to design in the things that matter.
Yes.
And we are absolutely 1,000% behind this being a community stadium. So my boss has donated this to a new community interest company. So the Stadium for Cornwall Community Interest Company will own land and stadium, and it will have a specialist sports concussion unit with all the technology that the Love of the Game concussion campaign is highlighting now. It will be there, available for the elite rugby and football players, for Cornish Pirates, Truro City Football Club, but it would also have open door to the whole of Cornwall. So if you're me, you're the rugby mum on the sideline, and your son or daughter gets felled in a match, you're there on the sideline.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
I'm not allowed to run on, but I'm,
Yeah.
And at the end
Concerned.
of the game, you are concerned. Yeah. You can't help yourself,
No, absolutely,
can you?
no.
And at the end of the game, you go, well, they seem fine. Do I go to the GP? I can't go to A&E. You can't walk into A&E with a child that's absolutely fine, but you're worried. What do?
Yeah.
I tell you what you do. You pop them in the car, you drive down to the Stadium for Cornwall, you walk through the door, and you pay 20 quid, 50 quid to get a brain scan.
Wow.
Which will take you 6 minutes. And that, I would do that day in, day out for my child, and I think that should be available for everybody.
As a sportsman, I definitely would have. I can probably say 50 times by playing football. I got hit twice in the head playing cricket, fast bowlers. I think I would definitely have, if that resource would have been there, I would definitely have gone. So this sounds groundbreaking.
It is groundbreaking. No, I'm really, really proud of it. And then what happens is that when you say you're going to do that in a stadium, then the physio at the football club and the rugby club said, that's brilliant because we have to drive concussion players 7 hours to Manchester. But could we also have a sports rehab unit? Because we have to go to Bristol for that. So we're going to have then, so you go a specialist concussion unit, but also a sports rehab unit and a gym. And all of that has, yes, it has a door to the pitch and elite players, but it has open door to amateur players, minis, juniors, seniors, veterans, men, women, across the whole of the county.
And again, for our listeners, how can they get involved? I know you've given us the website address, but is there ways that they can help? Can they fundraise? Can they get in touch with you to talk about their involvement?
Please do. I mean, Cornwall's the most amazing county, and but there are Cornish exiles everywhere. In fact, one of the reasons I feel so passionate about this stadium is that the sporting talent will be allowed to stay in Cornwall.
Okay.
You know, we send brilliant footballers and rugby players across the country.
Sure.
You can build an international team out of, ex-Pirates players and hopefully in time Truro City Football Club players. And it would be wonderful to have, Cornish exiles come join the team. We're going to be doing big fundraising, big crowdfunding to get this stadium built. We've got a supportable bid at Westminster. So the government loves everything about this project and that it helps. It's a health centre with a pitch on the side.
Yes.
And that's helping the
Wonderful.
whole activity levels of Cornwall. And there is public money available. There's private money. My boss is putting,
Substantial.
Yes, millions into
Wow.
it. But he is not, he's very wealthy, but he is not limitlessly wealthy.
Of course.
And so we do need, other supporters. So, stand up, come and talk to me, see how you'd like to be involved, come and use the stadium because there will only be elite sport played there 1 day a week.
Right, okay.
The rest of the time, it's for the community.
Wow.
So do you want to, it should be the Wembley for Cornwall. Come and play your finals there. If you want to do a mass start for your cycling event, your running event, you've got changing rooms, you've got showers, you've got, big areas, you've got secure parking. So all of that's going to be there at the stadium. So we can be that hub for major sporting events across Cornwall.
So from the smallest child to the old veterans who...
I'd love to see, the schools' women's junior football championships at the stadium.
Amazing.
I'd love to see the mixed ability or, wheelchair hockey finals at the stadium. And we are designing it to be that for everybody.
Fantastic. Okay. You mentioned there was a person involved, and I wonder if we could talk about this very special person who I've never met, but you've spoken about him on 2 occasions, probably within about half an hour, and I've hung on every word you've said. And if you don't mind, if we could talk a little bit about this unique, special person that is Dicky Evans.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic.
So my day job is I'm Chief of Staff to Dicky Evans. And
when do you sleep, by the way? When do you find time?
Well, yes. My husband calls me the human Springer Spaniel. That's probably... This is, that's kind of charming and kind of awful in the same breath, isn't it?
My son-in-law has a Springer Spaniel. I know exactly what you mean.
He said, if I give you just food and exercise, you'll be fine, darling.
Shocking.
So my boss is Dicky Evans. He is now, and he won't mind me telling you, he's now 76 and he has advanced Parkinson's.
Oh, dear.
And he is a fabulous entrepreneur, sportsman, philanthropist, and completely uncompromising and wonderful, and a family man, and all of those things in the same breath. And he was born in Penzance, and if you know your geography, Penzance is, right down at the toe of Cornwall, nearly Land's End. He played for Penzance and Newlyn Amateur Rugby Club.
Okay.
And like many people, this terrible sort of brain drain and talent drain out of Cornwall, when it got to university, he had to leave Cornwall to be educated. So he went to uni in London, and he then went to Africa as an engineer. So he's an engineer at heart and by trade. And in Kenya, he started a very successful business, fruit and vegetable business, then flowers. Okay. He, being an engineer, he took the way that you use light to help animals be well and translated that into growing roses that were bigger and longer than other roses. Do you understand that?
Sounds like an engineer to me.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, he's a brilliant businessman. He's a great engineer. And he created a very, very successul business in Kenya, and he's lived there for 52 years. So he's a Cornish boy, but he's a Kenyan resident. Married, 3 children, family man, brilliant and wonderful. And in Kenya, he's very, very well known. He's on 3 government commissions. He has their version of a knighthood. Wow. He's an enormous philanthropist. As a young man, he captained Kenya and East Africa rugby. Okay. So he's a proper rugby player.
There's the sports connection.
No, he's a very, very senior rugby man. And he was approached, I don't know the story, but he was approached by somebody when Penzance and Newlyn Rugby Club were in deep doodah, a couple of decades ago.
Sure.
And his heart has always been there. And he came back and he looked at it as a business. Forget that. He looked at it as a Cornishman and a rugby man. He went, I'll help you. Yeah. Of course.
Every county needs a Dicky Evans.
Yeah, it was a heart decision, not a business decision.
Wow.
And he has invested, and I have his permission to tell you, he's invested £18 million over 20 years. He's taken them up 4 divisions. They're in the Championship. That's the second layer of UK rugby. They've twice been in the playoffs for Premiership, and they this year have a very real opportunity to be promoted again. So that's his life ambition. And actually, he is elderly and unwell, and that's a really stark ambition now. And so the stadium comes into that because that's part of the legacy for his club, and it's part of the business model that will allow the Pirates to be sustainable when he's not here.
Wow.
So that's what I do. So he has a second business, a very successful hospitality business in Kenya. And I work with him on a day-to-day basis to set up strategic and tactical agendas for that.
Does he spend his time between the UK and Kenya?
Yeah. So he has, his home, his life, his family are in Kenya. But he spends as much time in the UK as he can. But as I say, he is, Parkinson's is very difficult.
Sure.
And it affects his speech and his mobility. So international travel is difficult.
Oh dear.
And as an ex-rugby player, he does say, this neurological difficulty...
I was just about to ask you about that.
Is there a link? Is there a link? And I think that concern has driven him to be, I think, the best owner of a rugby club in concern and care for his players. So Cornish Pirates have, I believe, the best player welfare for head injuries in the country. They do cold water swimming every day. Cold water swimmers do not get dementia. I don't mean like none of them ever, but statistically, it's a really good thing to do cold water swimming. And if you have no cold water, cold showers, even I have started to do the cold shower in the morning.
Wow.
So cold water swimming. He has funded the Love of the Game brain scanner WAVI trial, and Cornish Pirates is the only elite sports club there's amateur clubs involved.
Sure.
But there's the first elite club to be involved in that trial. So that starts in a few weeks' time. No, he's passionately committed to that agenda.
I've just read the Wim Hof book.
It's the Wim Hof Method.
Okay.
Go do it.
Wow.
So
I've been doing it for 6 months, having
Have
the
you?
cold showers.
Yeah.
But I'm fascinated into Dicky's life.
Yeah.
I really feel like the first thing I want to do now while I go away is read up about Dicky.
Yeah.
Does he have a profile at all? Have you created something
Not really,
for him?
no. I keep saying to him, I have to write your life story, Dicky.
Yes.
Please let me. And also partly because he's terribly well known in Kenya. You know, he is an entrepreneur, a wealth producer, an employer, a philanthropist, but he's really unknown here. So he has this great sort of, entrepreneurial drive, and he's so passionate about his rugby club, and they are a family. You know, he makes decisions based upon his staff being like his family members. They are outside of commercial decisions sometimes.
Sure.
But people don't know him. They don't. He's like the secret millionaire in Cornwall. He does no, genuinely.
Wow.
He pays for things that people have absolutely no idea about. You know, people who somebody came forward to me the other day and said, "Can I help?" He funded a music block at my school.
Wow.
He did. When? What? Time and time again, people say, "Oh, and he helped me here and he helped me there." He is one of the world's most wonderful human beings, and I'm proud to work for him.
To be able to give without recognition
Yep.
is one of the key goals,
It is.
I think, in life.
And really, my part of what I want to do is work on the stadium to provide an economic future for Pirates when he's not here, and also to find probably new shared ownership who want to pick up on that legacy. But what's going to happen with the stadium is there's actually a better economic model. And he knew that. You know, he's a businessman. He knows that that's the economic model that protects his beloved Pirates, will allow Truro City to follow their example. So Truro City's non-league. If they go up 4 divisions in 4 years because they've got a stadium where they can have, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10,000 supporters, that's their economic model.
Sure.
So I am, dedicated to ensuring that Dicky's legacy is a sustainable future for his football club and his rugby club.
What strikes me is the legacy of giving to that community, no matter how large, of a place that somebody like me, who played sport, who had those injuries, to be able to say to myself, I've got 20 quid, I've got 50 quid, I can go down and I can get checked out. That would mean quite a lot to me, because before, going home, having lunch after played football and then sleeping on the settee because I felt a little bit, that's the worry, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so the legacy of the stadium is one thing, the legacy for the community.
Oh, it's extraordinary. And the other thing that he has done is that he has now bequeathed this into the community interest company.
Wow.
So I talk about he's moved from owner to donor. So he has given that away in his lifetime. And I think one of the joys of Dicky, and actually, so owning a sports club might be madness, but actually, if you have money, you can't take it with you.
No.
And one of the joys of it is that you're effectively creating your legacy that you can enjoy in your lifetime. He loves it. I love it.
Sure.
You are giving so much, and it is no longer just the rugby. I think because of concussion, Parkinson's, motor neurone disease, dementia, all of these things that we really know so little about, that are associated with the brain, he feels very passionately that he can do this, and he can do it for Cornwall. And so often it's out there. Cornwall's, like the baby child over there at the end of the earth, and he is putting a standard-bearing project for the nation in that county. And the rest will follow.
I have a contact who's the chairman of Sheffield FC. Sheffield FC is the oldest football club in the world.
Is it?
Yes. And Richard Timms is a personal friend of mine. The first thing I'm going to do when I get back to Sheffield tomorrow is call him.
Well, I would be delighted.
And everybody I meet, and lots of our listeners will be listening to this amazing podcast today, and I'm so grateful that you came in to speak to us. The world is so richer because of the things that you've talked about.
Thank you.
It must be awfully, I don't know what the word to use, but your husband looking at you and thinking you're a Springer Spaniel. I completely understand what he's saying, but I would be in awe because I know how dynamic my wife is, and I look at her and think, how does she do those things? If your husband, I'd love to meet him and talk to him about you.
But I think it's also the gift of being able to work in things that you're passionate about. I mean, the balance for me is that I've spent a life doing things that I care about very deeply.
Sure.
And I get paid in heart stamps. I get the joy of doing something that 80% of the time I absolutely adore, and I don't get paid very much.
Sure.
I mean, Dicky's very generous, but I could have, gone into the city and done what many people who are listening to this do, and they can use their money to do 5 times what I do.
Sure.
So often people say to me, well, maybe I should give up my, high-flying career and go and volunteer to do X in Africa or India. And I'm saying, well, then you're just one person. Yeah. Your money can pay for 5 of you, or 10 or 15. So do not be embarrassed about it. But that's the balance for me, is that it doesn't feel like work because I do things I care about. And that way, I suppose you do find energy, don't you?
Jim Rohn said, make your vocation your vacation.
There you go.
That's fantastic.